Whenever someone asks me, Simone, why do you play the violin? I'm always a little embarrassed because I don't have one of those breathtaking stories. Many of my colleagues come from families with a long musical pedigree, or they started at the age of 4 or 5, inspired by hearing a musician on a cruise ship or in the streets of the city. My case was a bit different. Nobody in my family ever had anything to do with music professionally, and I started playing the violin by my own will when I was 11. It all began one day when, coming back home from elementary school, I asked my mother, "Can I play the violin?" Just like that, out of the blue. She was a bit astonished, but said, "Okay." But then how? How is it possible that an 11 years old boy had this desire out of nowhere? You must know that my mom would occasionally listen to some classical music on the home stereo. Unconsciously, music slowly captured my undivided attention, entering my soul. A child, unlike an adult, does not put up barriers, has no defense mechanisms. A child is pure enjoyment. A child simply listens. And moment after moment, day after day, practice after practice, I became a professional musician. And while doing so, I learned more about myself, my character and personality, the way my whole body reacts before and during a performance. You know, playing an instrument is like having a mirror in front of you. It can highlight your vulnerabilities, but also portray the beauty inside. The violinist has therefore an important task. He must be a mediator, a messenger between the strict technique of the instruments and the inner vibrations that music produces in the audience, while projecting and managing his own emotions. There is, in fact, an aspect about musicians that is often overlooked. How can a musician keep the stress level under control before and during a performance? Like artists and chefs, violinists too have their own recipes and secrets. At the beginning, my own secret sauce was this. I imagined I play for a one-person audience. I put an empty chair in front of me, and each time I repeated my performance, I would close my eyes and visualize a different person. My first violin teacher, an examiner, a person I love. Now I would be curious to know, which person would you put on that chair? For whom would you like to play? If you do this exercise, you will realize how different your reactions will always be. For a musician, it is helpful to focus away from technique and instead listen to your inner voices without giving any thoughts to what is going on around you. But then how can emotions go through a wooden, apparently inanimate instrument? Let me show you something. I will play now the same piece twice. Did you notice that the same piece had a different color, a different character? I hope you noticed. In this case, I used a violin technique called vibrato, one of the techniques that gives the most emotions into the music. And this is why, perhaps, people tune to music when everything else seems lost. Music is like a bridge across time and borders. I was very impressed when I found out that in Freiburg, in Germany, where I finished my studies, one of the first things that they started to rebuild after the devastation of the Second World War was the University of Music. Imagine a city in ruins, death, and tragedy all around it. Music was seen as the way out of the darkness, with a message that is sadly very relevant even as we speak. There is also another aspect about musicians that is often overlooked. Choosing music not only as a passion, but as a career brings immense joy, but requires also personal and financial sacrifices. Unless other fields of studies, recognition and financial comfort usually come later in life. And probably this is why music and violin in particular has always been seen as something for the elites. But contrary to popular belief, however, the violin was not seen as an elite instrument in the past. Let me bring you an example and travel back in time. We are in 1700 in Venice. A violinist and a composer living in the city called Antonio Vivaldi was the violin teacher of a girls' orphanage. His pupils were so talented, in spite of their humble origins, that he managed to form an orchestra with these orphan girls, who were a great success in the city. They even had to build a bigger church because too many people wanted to hear them. So we could say that in the same way as the famous cartoon Ratatouille said about cooking, anyone can cook. These examples shows you that also anyone can play the violin. But can anyone listen to classical music? Sometimes even listening to a violin is considered as something too sophisticated or something, again, for the elites. But I will change your mind. When I was studying in Italy, I used to live in a very nice student residence with about 20 students. In their eyes, my violin and I were considered some sort of ancient relic, boring and definitely too loud. So I decided to try to explain them my job. One time, after much insistence, I managed to take some of them to hear the Beethoven Ninth Symphony in the City Theater. This symphony lasts about 1 hour. So during the concert, I was a bit worried, maybe more than a bit, that they would find it very boring and never come back. It was my chance. And after the concert, my friends came up to me as if they had seen a ghost, saying, "But I didn't imagine it was so beautiful." Going to a concert never leaves you indifferent because you are invested with energy. And they don't just mean emotionally, but also according to physics. According to Fourier's laws, the heat produced by the sound wave is carried by vibrations in the air. Therefore, if I speak against a wall, it will heat up as energy passes through it. Now, the orchestra can reach the power of 90 decibels, the same as a Boeing 737, the airplane. Try to imagine the power of a jet engine a few meters away from you, but instead of being noise, it is a wave of sound, sometimes violent, sometimes sweet, and emotions that hit you. I know that the idea of sitting on a theater seat per hours, 4 hours, might be scary. Or that you might believe, it's too late to learn an instrument. But if you give music a chance, music will talk about you. It will tell your story, your emotions, your fears, your memories, your hopes. How? Music doesn't know any race and gives you the chance to see, feel, and experience what you want, what you need, what you are right now. So, what is your story? Thank you.